Natural Events in the Persian Gulf by Michael, Emma, Victoria, and Brooke.
Hurricanes and storm surges. A storm surge is the malformation of water levels rising higher than sea level, flooding dry land. Tropical storms and hurricanes generate storm surges, which form the drag of wind over the water and low barometric pressure. The height of a storm surge relates to the storm's size, strength, speed, and direction. Storm surges are known for flooding towns and cities, causing property damage and even casualties. Storm surges are caused by the tropical cyclones or strong winds and hurricanes that primarily develop in the Andaman Sea. Storm surge abnormality of water rising higher than sea level and moving on to flooding dry land. The main cause is high winds pushing the sea water towards the coast, which causes congestion and pileup of water. The height of a storm surge relates to the storm's size, strength, and speed and direction. These storms generate an incredible force of wind. The amount of power that the wind generates determines the storm surge. This is an example of a hurricane, the formation. First, warm water, which is more than 80 degrees Fahrenheit, provides energy for the hurricane and causes more evaporation, making humid air and clouds. Then the wind coming together forces the air upward. Winds flow outward above the storm, allowing the air below to rise. Then the humid air rises, making the clouds of the storm. Last, the light winds outside the hurricane steer it and let it grow.
Great Flood of Storm Surges. Although the Great Flood was a story from the Bible, some scientists like Robert Ballard are discovering evidence that would prove it actually occurred. Ballard, an underwater archaeologist, is on a mission to find evidence of the Great Flood. In an article interviewing Ballard, they say that 400 feet below the surface, they unearthed an ancient shoreline, proof to Ballard that a catastrophic event did happen in the Black Sea. Ballard believes that this evidence of a catastrophe some million years ago. The Great Flood could have very well been a storm surge. A storm surge is caused by hurricanes, often occurred in the rise of sea levels. Recent severe climate change has influenced the frequency of storms in the Gulf. The shallow and warm waters of the Persian Gulf, where cyclones have never been recorded, might generate the storms in future as a side effect of global warming, according to the study in the Journal of Natural Climate Change. The Great Flood could have also be considered a siege. A siege are periodic oscillations of water level set in motion by some atmospheric disturbance passing over a great lake. The image shows where the difference between a storm surge and a storm tide versus a normal high tide.
Marine organisms in the Persian Gulf. Now, the biggest threat to marine animals is the man-made error and destruction caused from the industry and nearby boats. Leftover fishing equipment and other things also cause a lot of death in the Gulf. To the right, we have a graph of the tidal height distribution of the Persian Gulf, and we see throughout the area that it's very high. And this definitely is a factor and influences how the storm surges occur. Now, surface temperature is also another big factor. With increased surface temperature and hotter waters, it makes it very difficult for any type of marine wildlife and animals to live comfortably. The temperature in the Gulf has risen an average of 0.6 degrees Celsius per decade. Now, that is about 3 times faster than the global average rate, which scientists, say that's very shocking because it's going to be very hard for the animals to adapt to such a new environment. Another thing that occurs when the animals cannot survive along with the increased surface temperature are red tides. And just like high tides, red tides are another thing that comes along with any type of natural occurrence. And these all have an influence on how likely these marine organisms will be able to survive in the Gulf.
Geological structure of the Persian Gulf. Persian Gulf is susceptible to storm surges because of geological hazards. Some of these geological hazards are wind, earthquakes, tsunamis, tidal waves, and erosion from currents. Since a storm surge is when there is an abnormal rise of water generated by a storm, the Persian Gulf is bound to be affected because of its shallow water level.